People often assume that searching for creatures outside established biological records is a hobby for the uninformed. We frequently categorize these pursuits based on our perception of those involved. If someone spends decades tracking tracks in remote forests, we decide they lack academic rigor before examining their data collection methods. This creates a barrier where we judge the person instead of the process. We assume that because the target is elusive, the investigator must be misguided. This social bias prevents us from looking at the raw information collected by these observers during their long hours in the field. Tracking an unverified primate is like a cartographer drawing a map of a phantom island, because the precision of the measurement tools remains independent of the actual existence of the landmass. This means that an investigator can utilize high-end cameras, audio recorders, and systematic grid searching without confirming the physical presence of the creature. The methodology focuses on data gathering instead of the finality of the discovery. When an observer records a footprint or a vocalization, they follow standard protocols for documentation. These actions mirror the steps taken in established zoological field studies. The scientific value of the effort depends on whether the investigator maintains a log of environmental variables and follows consistent recording standards. If the investigator records their findings without bias, the technical quality of the work reaches high standards. The primary challenge arises when the subject itself avoids direct observation. This creates a situation where the investigator produces valid data points that lack a confirmed biological source. The rigor of the search process exists in a separate domain from the physical confirmation of the animal. Imagine a researcher who spends 5 years monitoring a specific valley known for reported encounters. This individual establishes a grid for camera traps and keeps a detailed journal of every environmental change. They document soil temperature, humidity levels, and ambient noise patterns at regular intervals. When they capture a blurry image or an unexplained sound, they categorize it alongside their notes on local wildlife activity. They do not claim the evidence proves a discovery, but they present the findings for peer review by other enthusiasts. This person follows a disciplined schedule and uses calibrated equipment to minimize errors in their report. If a mainstream biologist reviewed these logs, they would find the data collection methods consistent with standard field biology. The investigator removes their personal beliefs from the report to focus on the objective patterns captured by the devices. This approach demonstrates how a person can conduct a formal experiment while studying a phenomenon that defies standard verification. The study remains a structured inquiry into environmental anomalies. If rigorous empirical methodology guides the search, then the distinction between fringe inquiry and legitimate science rests solely on the falsifiability of the subject. This perspective removes the stigma attached to the investigator. It forces us to acknowledge that a person can be a disciplined scientist while chasing a phantom. We often conflate the validity of a person with the validity of their research. This is a mistake because it ignores the structural reality of scientific inquiry. A researcher might follow every rule of the scientific method, but still fail to produce a falsifiable result if the creature itself remains outside the reach of observation. The problem is not the lack of effort or the poor quality of the equipment. The issue is that the subject does not allow for a clear yes or no answer through our current scientific tools. I find this distinction necessary for a clearer understanding of how we categorize knowledge. It allows us to respect the process of data collection even when the subject remains elusive. We should evaluate the consistency of the observation process instead of dismissing the entire endeavor based on the target. If we change our focus from the person to the inherent limitations of the subject, we gain a better grasp on why some fields struggle to gain acceptance. What criteria should we use to decide when a study becomes impossible to verify? We tend to dismiss entire categories of inquiry because the subject matter feels uncomfortable or strange. By focusing on the discipline of the researcher, we might discover that our definitions of science are narrower than they need to be. It is worth noting that the history of discovery is filled with things once thought impossible. Perhaps the gap between fringe studies and established science is not as wide as we assume. Can we learn to appreciate the process of investigation even when the results remain forever